There are no planned fire drills during the meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lift can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. We move on to the minutes of the agenda. First, the minutes of the last meeting. John.
Thank you, Chair. At the last meeting under the item quarterly report, I think this committee agreed that the appendix that has the transport report on it should include data on the floating bridge. Certainly, Councillor Jarman said yes, and the Chair at the time nodded. Can we, if we don't amend these minutes, minute this now, that will be included in the next quarterly report?
We can include that in the outcomes, Chairman, yes.
Thank you.
So that will be noted in the minutes of this meeting. Would someone like to propose acceptance of the minutes? Those in favour, please raise your hand. Anyone against? Carried. Thank you.
While you're signing those, Chairman, can I just announce a substitution in place of Councillor David Adams? We've got Councillor Claire Richardson, and Councillor Lever is on his way, so he'll be slightly late.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to declare an interest as Chairman of the Planning Committee on all of item 7, please. I would be very interested to listen to what everyone else has to say.
So that's a non-pecuniary interest.
Yes.
Thank you. Public question time. I don't see anyone in the public gallery. I don't believe
we've had none notified, Chairman.
Right. So we'll move on to progress update, pages 9 to 11. Anyone wish to comment?
Just note that.
Everyone happy with the progress update? So we note the progress update. Move on to the committee work plan. Forward plan, pages 11 to 18. Anyone wish to raise any issues with the forward work plan?
Normally use this item, Chairman, to identify any future cabinet items that members want to do some pre-decision scrutiny on.
I don't believe there's anything on the forward plan for the next cabinet meeting. Is that correct?
I think it's October, isn't it, Chairman?
Sorry, I have
just
one matter, and that is, I can't find it on the extract of the forward plan in our bundle, but on the website, there's an item 10, disposal of potential housing sites in East Cowes. It's got new with an exclamation mark next to it. That's due for a decision, it says here, by the Cabinet on the 8th of September, and that might be something that perhaps corporate scrutiny would like to have an advanced look at.
Councillor Jones Evans,
would you like me to assist with that? Yes, so there'll be more detail coming, but that relates to the levelling up bid and Venture Keys.
Did members want that as a formal agenda item on your corporate scrutiny committee in September?
I would ask that it is. I don't, it's probably my fault, but I don't know a great deal about it, and it does seem to me to be something worthy of scrutiny and at least finding out a little more.
It's moving forward to the next stage, so there'll be something more to report in next week.
So we'll put an update on that on the agenda for corporate.
Chairman, Obviously, Councillor Spink would want some further information. Would it be best, Chairman, to say if Councillor Spink has a discussion with a cabinet member in the first place within the next week, and from those discussions consider whether or not he would want that on the next agenda?
Certainly, I'm happy to deal with it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All concerned. Any other issues on the work programme?
I do on the forward plan. I've got a question on the forward plan. Yeah. It's on page 8, which is the review of public health partnership between Isle of Wight Council and Hampshire Council. I believe that there's going to be an LGA peer review on that, and therefore the 8th of September is quite a ambitious date, because if the actual peer review hasn't been set up, it's not actually going to happen until the autumn, which is going to be way after 8th of September.
Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lilly, you are absolutely right. There is going to be a peer review into the public health partnership and its approach. It is likely that that item will be slipped, but obviously that is a matter for the cabinet member and the director to confirm and publish in the next version of the paper.
Okay, can we just note that then? Thank you.
It will be noted in your follow up. Yeah. Thank you very much. Committee's work programme 2022-25, pages 19 to 24. Any comments? Everyone happy with that? Note it. Yeah, thank you. Item 6, affordable housing, pages 25 to 36. Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. Councillor Payne.
I just wanted to say in regards to this, I know that our town and parish councils are, and we have asked them to respond to this, so the cabinet are aware of all the local town and parish council responses, obviously in regards to particular areas, and we have emphasised the importance of this, and we are bringing this forward as an important item at our AGM. I want to make sure town and parish councils do respond to this, as obviously each individual area is important. That's just that.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson, Joan.
We are on affordable housing, aren't we, Chair? Yes, yeah. Well, I'm glad to see some detail provided to this committee, particularly in relation to the council-owned housing company. The detail I think is provided on 31. Under activity update, the housing company was set up in 2019. And the council's registered with Homes England. The only other detail seems to be an acquisition strategy to purchase up to 25 properties by spring 23. This company's got £40 million or up to £40 million to borrow. Is that it? 25 properties?
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. The company hasn't got 40 million in its back pocket to invest in property. It's, as we agreed at full council, it's got access to borrowing up to the maximum of 40 million. Now, when we're ready to move forward, then we will take it forward in an open and honest way with due diligence and with business cases to satisfy our Section 151 officer. We can't just, I mean, I wish we could in a way. If it was my money, I'd say, yeah, let's go out and do it, and let's satisfy our homelessness needs for a vast minority of the Isle of Wight. We can't do it, and with due respect, we will be doing it, and you will be taken to one side by myself, and we will go through as the housing company, which is evolving and changing, and we are taking legal advice on it. We will come up with a first class vehicle to go out and serve the people of the Isle of Wight in their plight for homelessness and purchasing of property.
Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also important to note that the borrowing that was set out in the budget strategy that was approved in February was a 3-year programme of borrowing. So in terms of the current financial year that we're in, the borrowing that was agreed for that year was 5 million, plus some cash back to enable the company to be set up. So the paper itself sets out the work that is happening in terms of getting the company into a position so that it can actually trade. And then, as well as that, it sets out the approach of putting in place a tool, if you like, an acquisition strategy for the council to acquire within its borrowing limits for this year, plus the cash that it has allocated, up to 25 properties, which is probably actually about what you can purchase with 5 million plus some cash. To enable those to come forward to provide for temporary accommodation and rental accommodation on island in the current year.
I'm grateful for the Chief Executive clarifying that, but if I could ask the Cabinet member again, this is a housing company that was set up 2.5 years ago. There is a housing crisis on the island with 2,500 families on the waiting list. What do you think island residents will feel when they see that this company that has millions to borrow, its aspiration is to buy 25 properties, 0.01% of the housing register as it currently stands? How do you think islanders will feel about that as an aspiration?
Islanders will understand that we deal with public money, due diligence, and if you like, working with a balance to take things forward. As I said just now in my opening remark, if I had an open wallet and enough money, don't you think I'd be looking after our homeless people? Of course I would. Those in temporary accommodation, those in bed and breakfast, those in caravans, of course I would. And so would you, Councillor Robertson. We're not heartless, but we have to be careful and diligent. And no room for error when we utilise the public purse, especially in the amounts of money that we're talking about. It's not just the housing company that is going to be acquiring property. It is going to be working in cooperation and with alliances with other organisations. We are a registered provider. We will look now to seek Homes England funding as well. So we're not just putting all our eggs in one basket. We're going out with about 5 or 6 different means and ways of acquisition. So rest assured, of course, islanders are not happy. I'm not happy. That's why I came along the last time, and I got a very nice invite to come back this evening. I came and I said, we're failing. Doesn't mean to say that the officers are failing. It means to say that the marketplace is ripe for fail. And it's not just the Isle of Wight, it's throughout England. We've got problems with our economy. We've got problems with housing and indeed staycations, Airbnbs, and moving away from the traditional rental market. So yes, we've got problems, and we're going to endeavour to overcome these things. But am I happy? No, I'm not. And I don't suppose there's one soul in this building that's happy about our situation. Or indeed those people that are found homeless, those children working from a home in a caravan in this weather, trying to make the best of their education. I'm not happy. I don't think I'm succeeding. I don't think I'm failing because I'm pushing all the way. And I'll try everything and anything to make us move into a damn sight better place. And I'm not talking about 25 houses. I'm talking about more than that by the end of the year, because as I said, there's more than one way to go about acquiring property. It's not always about purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on modular homes, I mean, the aspiration here is 8 family homes for the year. I mean, these numbers are tiny, and I appreciate, I'm not suggesting that you don't care, Councillor Stevens, but you've just acknowledged you're not succeeding and you're not happy. And I'm not surprised. Those numbers are pitiful in my view.
Councillor Stevens.
A response, Chair, sorry. Modular homes were first brought through this council last October. I think it was the 14th of October through our cabinet, when there was some grant funding for rough sleepers from central government. Central government quite rightly said we want to get rough sleepers off the streets for the winter months. We thought it would be a quick and easy way to move things along. It wasn't. So, as I said, we'll try always to satisfy our need and put a roof over someone's head, such as a rough sleeper. And so what did we do? We went out, we've acquired 6 flats, 1-bedroom flats, not all in the same block, but around the island as they turned up. So those rough sleepers will be housed in a traditional flat and supported by our social services department and indeed other stakeholders and agencies. So it's not all about modular. Sometimes we might need to put the modular aspirations to one side and let's go for the traditional fit. If it's at affordable prices, let's go for it. We're not there to put everything in one mold and say and cast the die. We're there to say, okay, we can adapt our requirements to the needs and the marketplace as and when possible. And yes, pitiful numbers, very pitiful numbers. One will be a pitiful number if you have one homeless person, but unfortunately, it goes beyond that. And I've got the figures again, and I dare say everyone else in the room's picked up the figures before they came in the chamber today. And it still doesn't look good, but we're still going to keep pushing. Sorry, modular or no modular, we're still going to pursue the fact. And as I say, look at the modular homes at this moment in time that we've asked for an expression of interest. Going on a bit now. From February, but we have to, once again, it's the public purse, and we have to take due diligence, and we have to make sure that things are right. Will modular homes be the end product? They weren't with the rough sleepers, so we allow ourselves a little bit of difference to take things forward in the appropriate manner, which suits the which actually suits a review and an end result that's positive for both our island residents and indeed this Isle of Wight Council and the financial situation. Thank you.
Councillor Drew, and then
thank you, Chair. Councillor Stevens, I was wondering in relation to the commissioning of the legal work and the business strategy plan, is there a deadline for when that's going to be published? Or is there a general time frame? When can we expect to see that potentially? Thank you.
Well, I'm going to say as soon as possible, aren't I? That's what I want, but it's not within my hands. Once it moves and it moves through to another department, I've got to be reliant on what they qualify and quantify as necessary to take things further, once again in the appropriate manner, and come back to me with time and dates. And at this moment in time, I haven't been given any, although I'm pushing for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Would it be possible, I mean, I appreciate what you say, and I know that councillors aren't personally responsible for these issues. It is a corporate effort. Is there any way that we can galvanise this and perhaps report back at another corporate scrutiny and have some firm date, even if it's 6 weeks' time, some indicative, I think, point would be useful as an end stop?
Councillor Drew, you're absolutely right. And we need to nail down the time and date. This isn't all cloak and dagger stuff. This is going to be out there in the open. So yeah, as soon as we can, you'll get it. But I noted that the chief exec wants to come in. Do you want to come in?
If I may, Chair, thank you. There's a follow-up meeting with legal advisors next week, Councillor Drew, after which point we should be in more of a position to outline the timescale that we're looking at. But as Councillor Stevens has said, it's our priority to get this sorted as soon as possible so that the company can trade.
So having got the meeting coming up next week, do we have an envisaged date for when it will actually be operational? I think we should. I mean, we should be setting ourselves targets. This is in the item of the plan of the council's work plan. It's in the budget, and we've only got 2/3 of the year left to do it. It should be, this should have a higher priority. Surely the cabinet sets the priorities.
Can I come back, Chair? And then the chief exec will explain in plain English what I'm about to say in Isle of Wight English, which is that once we got an entity up and running, and once we got, and we've got a head of housing, as I said, I wanted to rearrange this so that there is no complexity about who's doing what, when, and where, and it's in one department and then in another department. We need something that is a cohesive way forward. We need to make sure then that we have got timelines, and we have got objectives that we want to try and meet. We won't meet them all, but it's quite right to have smart objectives and if you like ways forward that we've got to meet or endeavour to meet. And that's also into coming back to the scrutiny committee or elsewhere to discuss lines of thought and where we are at a given time and date. But I think that we need to do that, not just with scrutiny in the Isle of Wight Council. We need to do that with IWalk and our town and parish councillors.
One other question for me, if there are any others. Are you concerned about the law of unintended consequences? You bought 6 flats, 1-bedroom flats. I have 3. I have 3 young grandchildren on the island who would love to get flats, and the prices are going up and up and up. And if we're buying flats and small properties, are we going to actually add to the inflation? 25 and the 6 you've already got, 31. That's not a fair number of properties. There is a potential to actually distort the market. What we really need to do, in my opinion, is to build properties, because that way you're not distorting the market. You're creating the properties for the people that need it. And I think you've got it the wrong way round, just going for the simple option of buying some properties. It's more difficult to build them, but that's what you actually do need to do, because otherwise you're just really putting pressure on the market that is already pressured, and I think you're wrong.
Councillor Quirk, you've got a point. I agree with you. And that is why I've said it's not just about purchasing property, it's about possibly building. And there won't be one member of the alliance who can wield a trowel. So we will be looking at going into an alliance with other people, with other, shall we say, registered providers. You know, and this is why I've been out and spoken with each registered provider on the island, the Vectors Housing and Sovereign Housing, Southern Housing people, to see if we can form alliances. No point in batting against each other when you can actually work together and bring things forward. And you're quite right. There might well be an opportunity to work together with other partners, and not just the housing association, but also local building and allied tradesmen. You know, because we're looking at, as I said earlier to Councillor Robertson, looking at across the piece and looking at everything. So we are discounting nothing.
It would seem to me that actually you need two housing companies, one that owns properties and one that builds properties or handles the finances for that, because that's a much riskier procedure than actually just owning a property. If you're going to start building and you're going to use council money, it should be safe. And so you need to look, I think you need to actually seriously look at the way that you set those companies up. As one who has set companies up in major corporations in the past, I think you need to look at how you minimise the risks. And that, I think you need to give some serious consideration. And I think that you need to start giving this some urgency. And I think you should be starting by giving yourself a target date to have the company operational.
Thank you, Councillor Quirk. I don't disagree with anything you've said, and I think part of the work and the scope of the work that we've asked our legal advisors to do is to give us the advice to set up that company so that it has a parent company and then sub-companies that come off of it that allow us to enable to work in the most effective way, making the best use of the resources and capacity that we have in terms of financial resources for the company as well. I think the paper that you have in front of you in terms of the affordable housing activity that's happening sets out the range of tools that the council is using currently at the moment. And I don't disagree that building is an option that the council should be looking at, and it is looking at it, and it's actively marketing its brownfield sites, 3 of its brownfield sites at the moment. Unfortunately, building doesn't give us an immediate opportunity to bring some houses into the market for our own use in terms of finding temporary accommodation. So we have to use a range of tools that are available to us. We're very aware that actually acquisition on the open market and acquisition on the secondary market could impact on the market on Ireland, and we're very keen to make sure that we don't do that through the work that we're doing. It is a risk that we've already identified in the work that we're looking at.
The only thing I would say is, if we don't start doing things now in terms of building, we'll be in exactly the same position in 12 months' time. And I would encourage the Cabinet to give some serious thought to setting some deadlines for the actual finalisation of having the company up and operational. Councillor Lilly, and did you answer my point? Councillor Jones Evans answer the point.
Thank you. Just to say, we've got Councillor Stevens here who's got the lead on housing, but the Cabinet is right with him next to him supporting moving forward with tackling this housing crisis that we're in. And we will use every tool in the box, every avenue will be explored, because we've got multifaceted approach to a multifaceted problem. And from what I'm hearing, you want timelines and you want just to move quickly. But on the other hand, we have to move with due diligence. It's really important this company is set up soundly, and we have to work within the legal process. So we are doing that. They're doing that properly. We're going to do it as quick as we can, but we're also going to make sure it's as sound as it can be, because we don't want to have problems down the line.
I have set up companies for one of the biggest companies in the UK. I've set up subsidiaries. It doesn't take months and months and months. It takes a little bit of attention to doing it. And if you can, it's very easy to put things off. And I don't think we should be putting off. if you give yourself a deadline, you can work to a
If I
deadline.
may just come back on that, we are working within, as Councillor says, within in the public environment. It's difficult when you're in the private sector. Public sector, you have to be much more diligent and work within a different framework. I hear what you're saying. The cabinet is completely behind and with Councillor Stevens, because this is our top priority, addressing this housing crisis within our very limited range of funds, I may say, because we do not still waiting for our island deal.
You've had £100 million worth of island deal, so it's irrelevant. Right, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like to say is that you registered that housing company, and I never do this. You know me. You registered that company 2019, the 18 with Companies House. We've now got to, because we looked over the last few months, we've now got to go ahead and do the due diligence and check it through. And as you quite rightly say, Chair, check it over, make it fit for purpose, make it do as we want it to do. But that company was there. That company was there. That the previous administration didn't. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a little thing called COVID, isn't it? Councillor Lilly.
I think we've got to have a reality check here, because there is a number of real issues which have created the housing crisis. One is a lot of people who are building houses on the island can't get the materials, and they can't actually get the skills on the island to actually build the houses. There's a whole lot of real things going on. And we also have to take into consideration that in COVID, 83% of private housing, which is owned by people on the island, or perhaps they're offshore companies, I don't know, whatever, have started to withdraw that private housing. That's something that the council hasn't done. That's what the private market has done. And what's happening in places like Ryde is landlords that own 5 kind of properties or 10 properties are selling those properties, right? Or they are actually giving 6 months let through the winter, and then actually going to have Airbnb, and that's the demand. There's also a huge demand now for second homes. That is increasing because there is a number of our estate agents. Look at our estate agents where they're advertising. A number of our estate agents are targeting the second homes market for that. And we've got to realise that very similar to Cornwall and to other sorts of coastal areas that are becoming favourable, particularly after COVID, where people were thinking of lifestyle change and things, is that they are targeting this. We should be talking to the government about this, and we should be looking at things like an Island Act or legislation to actually give us the power and actually protect this. I mean, you talk about the market and question mark. Well, I have no problem at all if this council goes and buys a lot of the flats, which actually there's a lot of flats which are not, necessarily getting or being attracted to or targeted by estate agents, to go in and buy some of those to get some of our homeless people off the thing. I'm not worried if that actually affects the market or not. I'm more concerned about a working family in my ward that's getting evicted, right? One of them includes being an employee of this council, right? Of that, who's got children and that, who don't know whether they got a roof over their head this winter because a greedy landlord wants to make money out of them and to make out a thing. That's what we should be tackling. We should be using the forums, which says on the page 34, and really bring the private landlords and our social landlords. Southern Housing made 63 million last year in profits. I don't think that's terribly good. We should be saying, if you're on this island, you've got to be decent, honest, and work with us to resolve this housing problem. And I would welcome my colleagues in the Conservatives who probably have a lot more connections, right? Because I just live in a semi. I'm just an ordinary former public sector worker that's retired, right? Who have the contact with these landowners and property owners and developers to actually start working together to actually provide housing for our future generations. I'm 65. You mentioned your grandchildren. My grandchildren, well, my children, only one of them out of 5 owns a property of that. A lot of us, like grandparents, are going to have to take equity out of our own properties to actually give housing to our future. We need to really bring our community together and start having an honest conversation and say to people, you know, stop actually using your houses to make money on Airbnb, actually use those houses to provide decent housing for our population.
There's some things that Councillor Lilly says that I disagree with him, but it's extremely heartwarming to hear someone in the administration actually speaking with passion on this subject. I do disagree with him that distorting the market isn't a problem. If the market is 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom flats, it will be young people who've been spending some time scraping together a deposit just to get a toehold on the housing ladder, who will find the Isle of Wight Council might be bidding against them on that flat. But I do agree with him on the wider points he makes about flats being used to make money for other people as well. And actually, I would rather like to work with him in order to try and help the council deliver on its promises. And I think his passion is actually quite infectious. Thank you.
Councillor Speak.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. One of the matters that you mentioned, Councillor Stevens, at our last corporate scrutiny meeting, and you've alluded to now, is that to bring forward, as it were, affordable housing involves discussion with a number of different departments within the council, and that is, to some extent at least, causing delay in delivery. Will you be writing a report on how that can be streamlined in the council? And will you be submitting that to the Committee for Transformational Change, which is looking into exactly that problem?
In a word, no. I won't be writing a report. I will be speaking with colleagues with regard to organisational change, and we'll take it through from that. If a report is required, then a request will be made through the appropriate channels, and it will be a report done through the organisational change. I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, the way that the housing section is set up across departments is not efficient, and therefore when organisational change takes place and transformation comes, there will be a rationale to the steps taken and why they were taken.
Right, Mayor, supplementary. The reason why we in corporate scrutiny invited you back, Councillor Stevens, was to set out, as it were, and I'm very grateful because this action plan is a great improvement on what we had before, in the sense of what you were able to produce before. But We did also ask you to identify the problems, and in order to identify the problems, it's necessary to identify them, I would suggest, in some detail so that we can try and solve the problems. When I say we, the council as a whole. And it would, I suggest, very much help this committee to understand the problems of the different departments having to, as it were, approve different schemes. Would very much help us in understanding that problem and therefore resolving it if you would put it down in a coherent, logical manner in writing so that those problems can be properly and sequentially addressed.
Yeah, in actual fact, I've written everything out. It's not a report, and I won't read it out now because you know you're drifting a little bit. But what I would say is that I've written down what the problems are, and as I perceive them, and as I've come against them. And when we move into looking at the ways that things can be tweaked or changed for the better, that's the time that will be put forward as part of a foundation or part of the relevancy of making the change. Because some of you said that last time out there was no need for change. There is need for change, and we're going to change for the better, and we're going to be more slick, more smart than we can be, and hopefully that's going to produce good results for our island residents. But I have got things written down. I'd share with you outside the meeting, but I don't want to read through, trolling through paper at the moment.
Well, I'm grateful to you. I'd very much like to see the list, so thank you for that. My final question is this, that you alluded to, and Councillor Lilly alluded to, problems with the economic position, and in particular, the increasing number of Airbnbers, second homers, etc. One of the difficulties that planning officers have suggested is that it's difficult to comply with planning legislation by, for example, banning second homers. Does the council need to think a little more out of the box and to seek changes in the law to enable councils to prevent second homers from buying new builds, and also to allow legislation to prevent Airbnb being carried out in new build properties? So, and if so, if you do agree, A, have you done anything about it? And B, when will you, please?
Councillor Stevens, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've spoken to the MP. I suppose that's a step in the right direction if we want to change legislation. And Bob's laid two or three things down in the new legislations that's going through the Commons, which is great. It's not the be all and end all, and I don't feel that I should steal his thunder and give out what he's actually said to me. But there are things, and I know that you're in contact with our MP, the same as us all. He is doing things. Whether he's doing enough, I think that Councillor Lilly and myself would say no. But we are where we are, and as I say, I'm not going to say that Bob Seeley is not doing anything for the island and homelessness and second homes, which was one of the areas that he mentioned to me. So we're looking at that sort of thing, and as I say, from my point of view, I'd like to see a legislation on second homes. I'd like to see it on Airbnbs. That we can. But once again, if we start to look at, and you're going to be discussing the island plan shortly, if we get the island plan through council and we start to make those changes, I think that we could actually show some solidarity that we want to get on and do it and do the job and make sure that we can actually get down the affordable housing prices down to affordable island housing prices for islanders.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stevens, Ian, will you circulate that document to the members of this committee and maybe the members of the review committee for the constitution, because it might be very interesting. You can. I think it'd be easier just to circulate it after the meeting. I'm sure if you give it to Paul, he'll circulate it for you. Councillor Lilly.
Just wanted to ask a simple question and then also particularly make a point. The simple question is, at the last meeting, when it was said about the need, and I questioned this, about setting up a housing department and bringing back the different people, like the empty property officer and the different ones, all together, so there was a bespoke housing department of people talking housing on a floor together, right? It was clearly stated, I believe, that that was going to happen, and that you're going to set that up and you're going to bring those people together and you are going to appoint a housing director. Is that, my first question, is that correct? Yes or no?
I've never said a housing director. I've said a head of housing. I've said we'll change things for the better, in my eyes. I won't take the words out of the chief exec's mouth, and we're working to form a team which is going to have housing at its core focus. And I don't know if Wendy, you would like to say any more than that.
And when is that going to happen?
It's on the road now, so things are moving. We've got things set up. I'll let.
So we can say by the 1st of October they're going to be in place.
Over to Chief Exec.
Thank you. The council has appointed a strategic manager for enabling housing delivery. That post started on the 1st of July.
Okay.
The person who is in that post is Dawn Lang. She sat behind you in the seat.
Hello, welcome.
Dawn
Thank
had
you.
experience.
First I knew about it, but thank you.
We haven't made any formal announcements yet because we are still in the process of setting up the structure in terms of how it works underneath Dawn. Dawn's key responsibilities will be managing a programme of housing delivery. That will include how the empty property issues are looked at. It will include working with our homelessness and housing needs service, bearing in mind that there are two elements to that. There are the people elements and there are the physical property elements. So Jamie Brenchley's team at the moment works across both areas. Dawn will be supporting the work of the physical property element of those teams to ensure that we have property coming forwards for them to use. I can't give you any more detail at the moment yet as to how that's going to work because we are still formulating the structure, but it will be based on being led by the strategic manager for enabling housing delivery.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for that. And actually, that's progress. And actually, we are moving, and there is actual evidence that's been supplied to this committee for that. So that's really good. The second point, I'm going to link into the island planning strategy.
Get an action on this one first.
Sorry?
I just get an action on this one first.
Okay.
Once you've got that sorted, can you come back to the this committee and actually present what the picture is, whatever it looks like, so that we can actually understand it?
Chair, I think that's the way that we should do is so that you can actually, I think this is the same throughout the authority. People come in as a member or come in as a staff member or an officer, and they slot into it. They slot into a position. They don't know what's going on over there, or I mean, as I said, I've got 4 or 5 areas of housing, from homelessness to empty properties to disability facility grants to other such items, and really they're all over. They're in different areas of service. What we need to do is just pull it together, and then with dawn at the head, we can actually start to move forward. And I think that's good. And once we've got it all set, I'd love to bring it back and say, this is Dawn Lang. Come and meet the housing manager.
Sorry, the second point, we've got the aspirations of what we're doing. Maybe we could get some regular updates to this committee about the progress that we're making with the plans that we have.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Michael, your second.
Well, it links on nicely to the island planning strategy, because I don't think you can really separate the issue of affordable housing from the island planning strategy. I think the two things are integrated. And I will be bringing back, because I agreed to withdraw my push for a task and finish group. And I will be going forward with a proposal after the island strategy for a task and finish group that covers affordable housing and the island planning strategy, because the two things come together. Because I still feel there is a need for scrutiny, the same we did some years ago with the housing strategy before the previous administration, to actually dig deep, and that group, task and finish group, could then directly talk to Southern and housing, and even perhaps bring representatives of the private landlord forum or whatever, to actually dig deep, which is difficult to do at this meeting, to get some answers and actually show the scrutiny section is on the case as well as the administration in digging down and actually getting answers for the people of this island that need housing within that. So I'm going to bring that back after that, and I'm not going to be persuaded to withdraw it this time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fuller, did you still want to make a point?
I forgot what I was going to say, actually. I don't want to steal the thunder of Ian, but one of the things that I wanted to do within the island planning strategy was talk about the direction that we want to put forward for future affordable housing. At the moment, it's very, very difficult on the island to create affordable housing on the island. What we want to do is see the Isle of Wight Council be a leader in trying to get local housing companies to do the same thing. And this is why we're putting forward policies that may prioritise affordable housing. I think there are a lot of elephants in the room at the moment, particularly with the increase in raw materials coming to the island and the impact that that's having on house building. I think that's something we are very, very aware of. But there are policies within the IPS which looks at first home bonus, which is a very, very good incentive from central government to encourage first homes to remain as first homes in perpetuity. That is a good policy. That is something that the council wants to be able to take advantage of. And also, when you look at affordable housing, the cost of it, 80% of market value is still well without the reach, outside the reach of local people on the Isle of Wight. Whether that's to buy or whether it is to privately rent, it is still a lot of money. And what we want to try to do is use our island plan to be able to sort of like promote giving homes to local Isle of Wight people.
That seems a very apt point to move on to the island plan. Would anyone like to start the debate? Councillor Robertson, Joe.
Question for Councillor Fuller. Will he consider adopting a brownfield regeneration of publicly owned land around County Hall? Will he consider adopting that and including it in the island planning strategy?
Thank you very much, Councillor Robertson, for that question. I think one of the issues that we have to do that is that this involves a lot of work. That work can't be done overnight. There are issues that we have in and around County Hall. If you're talking about the Riverside Quarter, which is one of the areas that was raised in your document that you circulated to all members last month, there are problems with doing that straight away. I think what you need to do is look at how many houses that may, how much housing that would provide. And by the time you go out to decide that, you then need to go out for another round of consultation. That will take time, and there are risks to taking that further amount of time to do that work. If you do that work, you will have to go out to further consultation. At the moment, I don't really want to talk about money, but we could be talking about, you know, the consultation that we've, or the cost so far to get us to this stage has been, I think Mr. Brewer would be happy to support me on this, is about £250,000. We would have to go through that level of consultation again if we are looking at reallocating new sites. I think what we're trying to do with the Riverside Quarter is there is a lot of work currently going on with Newport Harbour. I know Councillor Jones-Evans is doing a lot of that work with Newport Harbour. I think Newport Harbour was first raised in about 2009, and we still haven't really had a spade put into the ground yet. So I think what we are trying to do is we're trying to focus first of all on getting the Island Harbour development fixed, and then we can move on to the next stage. But there are discussions that have been going on, they continue to go on, but further work needs to go on. And again, I have to show appreciation to the Conservative group for raising this issue, because it's something that has focused both my mind and officers' mind onto maybe looking at that in the longer term. But thank you, Joe.
Just to if I can help on that, yeah, absolutely. We have invested many hundreds of thousands of pounds into the work and the master planning for the harbour. The previous Conservative, well, it actually started with the previous independent administration and the Conservative administration, and we're carrying on that work. That's what we said we did. We came in, we would continue with these big regeneration projects. It's in the corporate plan. That is where our focus needs to be, is delivering that. And there's lots of housing down there. There's business down there. There's a cultural building down there. There's lots of other leisure opportunities as well as an improved harbour facility itself. That's where we need to concentrate our efforts on what we have, not what we may have in the future, because we don't have the resources, either cash-wise, as I've explained, because we're still a little bit waiting for our iron deal check to come through. But we need to focus on the job in hand, and where we've already invested many hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money, and that's where our focus needs to be into delivery.
Yes, Robertson, Joe.
Thank you. I mean, this is not a document for what should we prioritise. This is a 15-year plan for land supply, and the land around County Hall in public hands is not in that plan at all. It was a conscious decision not to put it in. It's frankly not really an argument to say, well, if we were to go and put it in now, it would take us more time. Perhaps I can try another one. The corporate plan of the Alliance administration, its aspiration number 32 is to only develop greenfield sites when absolutely necessary. Is it absolutely necessary to build in the green fields of Bembridge and Freshwater?
Absolutely not. And I think one of the things we're looking at is we are developing brownfield sites. In the last year, as I mentioned previously, 75% of the homes that we have developed or has been approved in the or completed in the last year has been brownfield sites. One of the problems we have with developing on brownfield sites, as well, you know, Joe, is that the margins are not there to create the affordable housing. We've just had a debate on creating more affordable housing. If you put affordable housing on brownfield sites, unless you're guaranteed of that money coming from government, which we're not, then the yield of affordability is much, much lower. if you're developing a greenfield site, then you can create more affordable housing in those areas. Now, I've been talking to people in Freshwater, I've spoken to people in Bembridge as well, and they've mentioned to me they need affordable homes for local people because those people are priced out of the market. Now, if you don't have allocations in those areas, you then run the risk of actually excluding those people even further from being able to live in their local villages. Because what you're doing is you're taking away the potential for creating new homes, affordable homes in those areas, which again comes with a risk. Yes, Newport is important. We have been criticised when we went out to consultation last year. We were criticised in Bembridge for putting in greenfield sites in Bembridge. We were criticised in Newport for having a huge amount of housing in Newport as well as Ryde, because that is where the majority of homes are going to be focused on. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is a plan for the Isle of Wight. We can't pick, you know, what I have said, and one of the things I said when I went to Bembridge is if there are good reasons not to develop those sites in Bembridge, if there are good reasons not to develop in Freshwater, this is your opportunity to provide the evidence to shut those sites down. Now, I know that in Freshwater there have been a couple of sites where the where the evidence has meant that developments haven't been able to go ahead. But again, we made that call on those residents, and we asked for that evidence to be provided, and in some cases we have responded to it.
I'm very happy to give you some evidence right now, Councillor Fuller, on affordable housing in Bembridge. Right on the edge of that site that's in your island planning strategy, there is a house ready to be built. It's been marketed. It's a bungalow for sale, 2 bedrooms, £625,000 for 2 bedrooms. There is nothing about the sites in Bembridge, and I suspect Freshwater, that's affordable. That land is in private hands. You cannot apply a discount to make those sites affordable. But if we go back to my question, which was, is it absolutely necessary to build on those greenfields in Bembridge and Freshwater? You said absolutely not necessary. So please, can we take them out of the island plan?
Right, on the first issue that you raised, you mentioned about the bungalow in Bembridge. You've got to remember, we are still working in the presumption in favour of sustainable development, which is laid out in the NPPF. One of the problems we have with with not having a local plan for the Isle of Wight, we are very much put on the naughty step by government, and we are then having to apply some of those issues that that corresponds to us by not having a local plan in place. What we are doing is we're creating a plan that will safeguard some of these greenfield spaces, some of these areas, making sure that we can evidence the need there is for houses. I think one of the issues that I have with the presumption in favour of sustainable development and the government's the government's figure as it stands at 730 is too high. We went out to we didn't go out to consultation. It was the previous administration went out to consultation, asked local residents what they want. We came back with a plan. Following that consultation, we took out 2 garden village sites. One of those was in West Wight. We got rid of that. We listened to what residents were telling us, and we did exactly what residents asked us to. One of the other concerns that came out was that housing number was far too high. We have got that housing figure down to as low as we possibly feel that we can get it to. It's 65% of what the standard method of what government is saying. So we are doing what we can. What we can't do is when residents tell us we don't like this allocation in this site, we can't remove it without proper evidence being given that site is not a sustainable site for future housing. We just can't do that. But I'm willing to talk. I'm talking to your parish council next Thursday to see if there is anything further that we can do. And my door has always been open. I've always said that, Joe, and I'm quite happy to work with you and to work with your parish council to see if we can find a solution. And I hope we can. Thank you.
One
Councillor
last
Robertson,
attempt at trying to get an agreement between us, Councillor Fuller. You and I have been talking, and I'm grateful for that. Do you agree with me? It doesn't help when one of your colleagues is briefing the newspapers anonymously that the Conservatives are trying to buy votes and delay this process by 12 months. That's an anonymous briefing in the Observer newspaper on the 24th of June by one of your colleagues. Can you at least agree with me? That's unhelpful.
I know nothing at all about that, so it would be very hard for me to comment. But I would be quite happy to talk to you, Councillor Robertson, after that, because I'm not aware of that. But if you would like to share that information with me after the meeting, I'm quite happy to discuss this and take further action.
It's in the public domain, Councillor Fuller. It's in an article in the Observer, and an anonymous alliance member, an alliance source, and they're quoted. I suspect they're sitting quite close to you. They're quoted as saying that the Conservatives are trying to delay this by 12 months and buying political votes. If that's the alliance's position, fine. But I'm hoping you might be able to agree with me that that's just not helpful when we're trying to get this through full council with cross-party support.
If you want me to, well, yeah, I'm more than happy to support you, Joe, because I think generally with 96%, 97% of what we have within our plan, we're in full agreement. There are just a few red lines that we want to try to discuss further. It's not helpful. I will admit that it's not helpful, but we are where we are. And at the end of the day, I would not want to take for granted any vote when it comes to full council in September. And that is why my door has been open for the last 12 months. It continues to be open over the summer break. And I am happy to have those conversations, which you know that I will be. You know, I'm always happy to talk to you and your colleagues, and happy to talk to my own colleagues. But thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Lilly.
I think we again need a reality check here, really. And we've got to stop this thing of whether we take something out of Benbridge. I represent Ryde, and Ryde, and it's official, it's evidence, has a deficit of green space. We have children in flats in Ryde that have no access to green space unless they actually walk or get a bus or get a car to. And I'm sure Councillor Drew knows that from the area that he represents. We have got to look at this as a whole island, and we've got to look in inequality and not, you know, say, because an area like Ryde is taking the biggest hit on housing within this, you know, this document. And this is where I want us to come on the reality check. We have gone through a difficult time of planning. I chaired the planning committee in that in that period, and it wasn't easy through it, because we did not have a plan, and therefore we were vulnerable to sustainable development. We had a planning application last time in Puckpool. If we'd had a plan, right, very clearly, and we'd had this plan, right, that application would not have gone through because it wasn't near a settlement boundary. There was a number of things. But the reality is that had been refused, right? And I did, you know, vote against it with heavy heart. But if it had been refused, it would have gone to the planning inspector, and he would have overruled under the rules of sustainable development. And our officers, and I give huge credit to them, right, because I've worked with them very closely for a year, right, have had to work within the realities of the law now, right? Because we have not gotten a plan. And if we don't come together and agree, right? And that's why let's set up a task force, let's have those little chats in between. But when it comes to September, we have got to pass an island plan. The LGA report, right? Very clearly, peer report said, if you don't do anything else, right, you have got to pass an island plan. in September. Because I tell you this, the developers out there will love it, because they'll say, oh, they haven't got it together to sign a plan. So we'll just put in our applications. And you will have your 66 houses, I promise you, built in, right? Even if the planning commission, the planning committee vote against it, the planning inspector, because we, as said, are on the naughty step, right? We'll just pass that through. If we've got an island plan, even if it's got areas, and I'm telling you, I'm not terribly happy with it on Ryde, with some of the sites, etc. But I tell you, I got a far better chance to fight with the planning island plan strategy, even as it is now, to actually not only, because it's not just winning in getting a refusal on certain sites in a planning committee, it's having the evidence that our officers and lawyers can fight that and win that in at the planning inspector when it's built, because those developers have got the money to appeal, and they will appeal. So let's get together, and I'm going to put my proposal to move this on. We set up a task and finish group that's for looking at the affordable housing and the island strategy, with a very fixed time scale, so that we've actually got for September, so that we can actually get some unity and some suggestions that we can work with Councillor Paul Fuller and James Brewer and the team that are working really hard on this to actually get this through. Because I am going to vote for this island plan, even if I don't like certain things, because this island is far better having one that we can then, as a living document, work on and modify, right, than we have without one. And we cannot let that go past September. So my proposal, and I'm looking for a seconder, is to set up that group so we can go into the details and we can move on in the agenda tonight. Thank you.
I disagree. We're here to scrutinise a plan, and I'm the only one who's spoken so far. Other councillors on this committee might want to speak. I'm very glad to hear, Councillor Lilly, that you like the plan. No wonder you want to move it on.
I don't like the plan. I have said very clearly, but we have got to actually take the point, Councillor Robinson, that, right, if we don't come to an agreement, if we don't get a majority and get that plan through, we are going to be in the position, with all the applications that are coming through, that most of them, if they get refused, will go through and get on appeal, because of the rule of sustainable development. We need, if we get a plan, it's going to still be 12 months or whatever to actually get through the planning inspector, and the current government, we don't know what to expect on that one. Hopefully you're making noises within your party so that we do have a government in September within that. So, because this island is creaking at its thing, because there is not stable government at the moment up in London. We will have 12 months, but under the NPPF, if you read that document, and Councillor Spink is very well versed in it, and I'm sure he can advise you on it, it says very clearly, once you've got a plan that's gone to the planning inspector for that, you can start using that plan within that, which we can't do at the moment. So that will actually help us in the next 12 months, more than actually starting the whole process again of going through consultation for something new. And I'm not terribly happy, but I'm a realist and a pragmatist.
Well, perhaps, Chair, this committee could continue the job of scrutinising the island planning strategy, and we might hear from the two Green Party councillors who are also sitting on this.
Cameron, were you putting your hand up to speak or to second the motion? Right. Before I let you speak, the timescale for task and finish group is incredibly short. And actually, this committee needs to make serious consideration because we are the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I think we need to have a meeting in a couple of weeks' time, an unofficial meeting of the committee, an informal meeting where we all actually get involved, not a task and finish group with just one or two of the of us, but all of us should be involved in that. And what I would propose is that anyone who's got any issues that they're concerned about sends in to Paul their concerns, so we can put a document together with all of the issues that different people have, that we can then discuss at an informal meeting of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee in a couple of weeks' time. It is, but it's a task and finish group brings other people in, and it takes and this. I think this is a whole committee responsibility, not just for three of us to do.
The task and finish group is actually goes away, gets all the information, and come back. And yes, we've got to do it quickly, and we've got to come forward. And some of us got to work hard on that, which I'm prepared to do. With that, I'm sure Councillor Robinson, definitely Councillor Spink would do. And then yes, we have to come back together and to actually do. That's what a task and finish group does.
Chairman, can I assist? I think the problem is we've got the draft island planning strategy well in advance, as we asked for. That gives us sufficient time to have an informal meeting as the whole committee. It's up to members if they want to take part in that or not, to go through the nitty-gritty of what comments the original task and finish group made, have they been taken into account, and those areas that the Corporate Scrutiny Committee feel should form part of a recommendation through to the September Corporate Scrutiny Committee that can then be transmitted to Cabinet and subsequently full Council. I think it's a role for the full committee on an informal basis. And certainly you asked for the information up front. There's no need to discuss the detail of it tonight. We have an opportunity, if members want to go away, think about the issues that they want to centre on, focus on over the next couple of weeks. We can pull those together as strands and then have an informal meeting of the committee. It may need 2 informal meetings before our September meeting. What I would like to try and do is have a list of issues that we may want to raise so we can forward those on to the cabinet member and officers so we can get a response in time for your September meeting. Yes, time is of the essence, but this is an important item. And if we do this right and with due process, I feel we can have a good outcome.
By whatever name we call it, are you happy for us to adopt that process? Can you show your hand if you are?
That's really Chairman.
Councillor Paul.
I like where you're coming from. I think one of the things that we can also do as well is that we have frequently asked questions, which is one of the amendments that we have for the island plan as well. And if there's questions coming up that you need a response to, maybe it would be quite good if we can get a response to those questions and make sure that goes into the public domain prior to the decision that we make at full council. It shouldn't get that far in September, which I'm sure we will. But thank you.
Cameron.
I've got a few. So I'm going to start off with under education provision. Obviously, East Cowes is one of the primary settlements. I'm using this just as an example because we've got one EYFS setting in East Cowes because one is now closing, which is at full capacity. If we were to have the proposed 546 houses in the East Medina area, I note that includes Wootton as well. We could be in a position where we've got young children without an EYFS setting compared to other areas where we've got schools that are needing the numbers to come in. One of our primary schools is very full. Another one, yes, could take on more pupils, but we've got areas across the island where we've got massive vacancies in schools. So we should be supporting those communities to thrive. So bringing those houses to those areas to ensure there are those school places for them and give the best outcome for those communities and children. So I was just wondering what the logic really was behind having additional houses in areas where we know we've got schools that are almost full or at full capacity compared to other areas that aren't.
Councillor Fuller.
I'm happy to come back. I think the whole thing of the island plan, it's not just about bricks and mortar, building new homes. It's about having a strategy for the development of the island in the next 15 years. Schools need to be in a position where they can prepare for the future. They need to know where housing may come about, where housing is deliverable, and they need to be able to plan for that. The same applies to the NHS, to doctors' surgeries as well. I think all of us as councillors have heard complaints about our doctors' surgeries aren't fit for purpose. What we're trying to do is to say to the broader Isle of Wight public, this is what the plan is. Have you got any issues about this? And how can we prepare to build in some of the issues that you've got? We've been in consultation with a lot of these companies. One of the probably highest profile consultations that we've had is over infrastructure and Southern Water. Now, I know we can have another debate for another 2 hours about Southern Water and infrastructure, but those discussions have been ongoing with council officers about how Southern Water can facilitate future housing need in the infrastructure that we've got. They have to bid for funding as well as the Isle of Wight Council and other agencies do. So let's work together to get to the right place. And that is what the Island Plan is all about. It's not just about bricks and mortar and creating housing. It's much more besides. And protecting our environment is something else that is something very important.
Yes, Cameron.
Yeah, the next one's from colleagues in Sandown and Lake. So their question is in regards to why does the draft island plan show an industrial estate at Sandown Airport when it's already twice been refused, and it also infills the strategic gap between Lake and Apseath? Obviously, has this been considered, as it is a strategic gap there and it's already been refused twice already?
But thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you through the chairman. Of course, I do not know the details of that, but I'm wondering whether Mr. Brewer might have an update on that particular site at Sandown Airport. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fuller, and good evening, members. So yeah, happy to pick that one up, Councillor Palin. So there is a potential employment allocation at Sandown Airport. There is a larger site that has previously been refused, but the allocation is less than the site that's been refused. But happy to give you some more technical and detail on that outside the meeting, not a problem at all.
And again, Cameron.
Thank you. Now, on to the EV charging. Obviously, I know the council's already rolled out some of the EV charging places, which is obviously really good, and it's good to see that infrastructure in place. I know some are already in use. For example, in East Cowes, we've got some in Newport which already aren't. I guess the question is ensuring that future rollouts of these EV charging points are able to be used as quick as possible. As I know there has been hurdles with them, but making sure that these can be overcome as quick as possible for the future rollout.
I don't know whether, I think it's probably more relevant to Councillor Jordan with the EV rollout. I know there's cabinet paper that is looking into this, and I'm wondering whether I could bat this to Councillor Jordan, but certainly from a planning perspective. Oh, Councillor Jordan's got that. Oh, it looks like I'm going to have to answer on his behalf. So I'm quite happy to refer this to Mr. Brewer. It certainly is a priority.
I mean, I can also say that last week at Neighbourhood and Regeneration Policy and Scrutiny Committee, we had an update from Councillor Jordan on the location and the rollout of electric vehicle charging points. So I can send that to you, Councillor Palin.
Right, we seem to have come to the end of discussions. We've got to wait. Oh, sorry, Councillor Peter.
Paul, it wouldn't be a corporate scrutiny committee meeting if I didn't ask you a couple of questions. But
Councillor Spink, I thought you were poorly.
But contrary to some people's opinion, I'm not against development on the island, and I'm certainly not against development which provides truly affordable homes, and I think you're aware of that. I am against, however, unnecessary development on greenfield, and particularly greenfield, well, greenfield full stop, but particularly outside of settlement boundaries. And I hope that's not just a selfish NIMBY view, because I happen to live in a rural area, but it is important to the character of the island, to the rural tourist economy, which many people on lower incomes rely on in the West Wight, that greenfield is not lost unnecessarily. And I note, as Councillor Robertson has mentioned, that it is Alliance policy only to develop on greenfield sites where absolutely necessary. Would you agree with me, therefore, please, that SP1 of the current plan, the 2012 plan, which says, unless a specific local need is identified, development proposals in the wider rural area will not be supported? Would you agree with me that that core strategy should be included in the new draft island plan? For two reasons. Firstly, it is in accordance with national policy, paragraph 78 of the MPPF, and our plan should accord with national policy. And secondly, it is essential, as I've said, to maintaining, as it were, a balance between development. Not against development, but in the wider rural area should only be where it satisfies a local need. So if, for example, there's a local need for affordable housing in an area, then provided that is truly affordable to that area, it can take place. But if there is no local need, in my submission, the rural part of the Isle of Wight should not be used to deliver a general need. So that would be my request, that SP1 is reinstated, because at the moment you can have, without a local need being shown, you can have development in rural areas in the form of infill. You can have development in rural areas in the form of first home exception sites. And you can have development, and this is the most concerning one, of windfill sites. And windfall sites cover just about anything. A person who comes up with a 200 house housing estate could be a windfall site, and there's no protection on rural areas against that. Is there any objection, and if so, what is it, to putting SP1 into the DIPS?
Thank you very much. I think largely I agree with you, Councillor Spink, and I've heard you at, I think, the last two planning committee meetings where you have referenced policies that we have, which are new, which are within the island plan, to actually try to use those policies to turn down applications. You know, we had one application at Wootton, which was quite relevant. You know, if we have the policies within the island plan, that would have given us the maybe grounds to question the application at Wootton. And again, the same would have applied for Puckpool as well. We could have used our policies that are embedded in there. I think what's happened since SP1 is that the world has moved on. And I remember, and I think it was SP1. I haven't got my island plan in front of me, my old version from 2012. But I remember there was a policy in the past that used to say it was acceptable to build immediately adjacent to settlement boundaries. Now, that is a policy that came back to bite us on the bum, if you like, Councillor Spink. Time and time again, we saw applicants coming in, developers coming in that wanted to put in properties immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary, not within the settlement boundary, immediately adjacent to. And I think we have two examples that are currently sort of like under consideration at the moment. One at Camp Road in Freshwater, one in Bembridge as well, which could be classed as being immediately adjacent to a settlement boundary. We felt that SP1 did not serve the purpose that we wanted when it was first written. So we've revised that policy and we've ensured that that policy is much more fit for purpose and is not so much appealable as we were with SP1. I think an inspector did say that SP1 had sort of like lived its life. It was out of date, and therefore the what it was trying to achieve was no longer achievable. So we are trying to adapt that. But I'm wondering whether Mr. Brewer would want to add to what I've said on that, because I think what you're saying, Councillor Spink, is absolutely spot on. We have to protect as far as we can our green spaces. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, just a couple of points to note, and I think this is the comparison between SP1 in the core strategy and G2, effectively, which we've got in the island planning strategy, which is around our priority locations for housing and growth. And I think we've already been thinking this afternoon about whether there is the potential to perhaps remove some potential ambiguity that's in G2, because I guess where we've gone a bit further in this version of the plan, as Councillor Fuller stated, where we've got additional policies that kind of seek to control development outside of settlement boundaries. So the infill policy, the exception sites policy, new housing on previously developed land, and also housing in the countryside, which refers to rural workers' dwellings. So they're the kind of very limited occasions we would expect development to come forward outside of settlement boundaries. What we potentially can do is look at the wording around minor and major to be really explicit on what we mean about that. As Councillor Spink rightly said, that there is a windfall allowance in the plan of 100 dwellings per year across the plan period. Obviously, some of those infill opportunities, the rural exceptions, the housing on previously developed land, development that comes forward under those policies and is supported by those policies would be windfall development. If a site came forward, for example, for 200 homes on a greenfield site outside of the settlement boundary, whilst that would be windfall, the policy G2 as it's written at the moment would give the ability for that application to be refused on the basis that it doesn't meet that policy, it doesn't adhere to that policy. So, but we say perhaps one of the issues we can look at in the working group is that technical wording between SP1, the journey to G2, and whether everyone's comfortable with the kind of intentions of that.
If I may, Chair, I don't agree, I'm afraid, with your reading of G2. G2 would allow windfall, and it would also allow infill. And it would also allow first home exception sites without there being a local community need. And if it's the intention of G2 to prevent development, unless there is a local need, then it most certainly needs to be redrafted. So I would say, you say also, Councillor Fuller, that things have moved on. Well, they've moved on actually in the direction of greater protection of greenfield. All the indications from government are that there are going to be greater protection for greenfield. And at a time when the government is doing that, we are committing ourselves to a draft plan, which we're all asked to vote for, which will go in the opposite direction. Why?
I think we're getting into the detail that we should be looking at our informal meeting. So
I agree with you, and there are many more details I could raise, but it's important in this world, I've learned of the council, to put markers down at an early stage. And my marker is firmly down that I will not vote for this draft plan unless there is proper protection for greenfield, and that means a SP1 provision or very similar to it. And I don't accept the comment that I will be preventing the plan. I take the view that Councillor Fuller and Mr. Brewer will be preventing the plan by not agreeing to my amendment. Thank you.
so are we happy to move on now? Is it? It's not detailed.
I just want to make a particular point. I respect my colleagues' views, right? But I think we've got to move away from this language about, you know, rural, right? You know, which then applies, there's urban of that. We are an island because we're an island, the green between our settlements is not recognised as green belts, right? That's the problem. We're not accepted within the planning law because of the nature of it. And so those green spaces that you talk about are just as important of protecting them in Ryde or Newport or Cowes or Shanklin and Sandown as they are in Freshwater or Bembridge. And we've got to start to actually get some inclusivity, because when you talk that way, Councillor Speed and Councillor Johnson, the people of Ryde start to say, my God, those people on the west or in Bembridge are actually making, we've got to take the hit, and they don't. We've got to change the language, because otherwise we're dividing our community. And I have to say, Ryde is nearly a third of the population in the you know, the largest urban place. We have to here start. And I'm hoping through those meetings, which, you know, I've conceded to from a task and finish group, we can start actually building consensus between us and not division, because there's historic reasons of people not liking people in the west or in the Bembridge and we've got to stop that and actually say we're islanders together and we're equal, and stop using this rural and that. We are a whole island rural community, coastal community, and that's what we are.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the comment that there are historic reasons why people don't like those who live in the east or the west Ryde as a joke, albeit quite a bad one, Councillor Lilly. The reason that Ryde has to accept its allocation is probably going to be because one of its ward councillors, IEU, has already announced that they're going to vote for the island planning strategy. You have said you will vote for it as it is. That's the reason. I'm also query why you have a problem with the language urban and rural. It's throughout the island planning strategy. Urban and rural are definitions. Greenfield and brownfield are definitions. They are either or, and they are peppered throughout the island planning strategy.
Well, perhaps that's always something we need to discuss then.
Right, we'll move that discussion. We'll move that discussion on. So, requesting members report, send in the issues that they are of concern to them. Paul will collate that. We'll put it together into a sort of a document that we'll have basically as the agenda for a meeting that we will try and convene within a couple of weeks' time. Everyone happy with that? So that's the island planning strategy. We note the document. Yep, and we will discuss it further. Members' questions. I have two written members' questions. The first is Councillor Michael Silly. Would you like to read it yourself?
Yes, my question was regarding the former Ryde Arena, the ice rink, which is still empty and still an eyesore on our esplanade and seafront. Please can Isle of Wight Council publicly update Ryde and Isle of Wight residents on the current and future of the largest empty building on Ryde seafront, which has laid empty now for many years and is simply an eyesore. Isle of Wight Council supported the ice rink campaigners to get the ice rink reinstated. There was a full motion at full council that gave 100% support through supported motions, full council, Isle of Council, as the freeholder. The Isle of Wight Council owns the building. There has been no public update for at least 18 months. The proposed ice rink on Smallbrook has failed to progress, and the island ice skating hockey community have been left with nothing. Although island skating teams are still travelling to Gosport at 3 o'clock in the morning to actually train, and they are winning national and international trophies. We have an Isle of Wight synchronized skating team that is actually a national champion. So we've got two that are national champions and actually international champions within that without an ice rink. It's an absolute tragedy. There was speculation that the building lease had been sold to a local distillery, but now there seems to be total silence. It is important that Isle of Wight Council, through its public-faced meetings like this, provides a full update as the Ride Gateway, although being improved by the Ride interchange, still has a pressingly dilapidating eyesore of a building. That was my question.
And the response, the Isle of Wight Council has agreed to the assignment of the lease from NY Mellon, AEW, to a prospective new tenant, which would facilitate the refurbishment and reuse of the premises. The agreement in terms of a new lease is a matter between those two parties, but given the time that has lapsed between the Isle of Wight Council assignment, the council will be writing to the current leaseholders to seek an update of the current situation. It's disappointing that the proposal at Smallbrook has not been able to progress, and I can confirm that officers have been and will continue to support local stakeholders in identifying an alternative provision here on the island.
Thank you. I would hope, can I response to that we owe this community, and particularly the young people that are still trying to have a future in skating. I believe if we had still had a skating, we would be having medals at a Winter Olympics. That was the standard that we were at. In fact, a number of young people went off to, I think, Hollywood, Disney World and skating there. And we have let our young people down by actually not getting a facility within that. And I just want that sort of noted, and that we do get some answers back, because we need that space and that building in some kind of productive activity. And we also need for our future sports young people and for their well-being facilities which actually are very expensive and difficult to access on the mainland. So I hope everyone will support me in that it was time after 18 months to bring this back into the public eye. Thank you.
The second question I have is from Councillor Jeff Brody. At last evening's meeting of Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council, the following motion was agreed. NCCC notes that the Isle of Wight Council Cabinet intends to make a decision on 14th of July to perhaps implement pedestrian improvements in Newport High Street. NCCC notes that it has had no direct consultation with the proposals to be submitted to the Isle of Wight Council Cabinet, despite it providing significant funding and support for the High Street Heritage Action Zone, from where the pedestrian improvements proposal emanates. NCCC resolves to call on the Isle of Wight Council Cabinet to defer any discussions on the proposals for pedestrian improvements until we have had direct consultation. And there's also concern raised at the Cabinet report that says, furthermore, Cabinet authorises the Director of Regeneration and the Director of Neighbourhoods to prioritise and work towards measures to reduce the volume and size of vehicles moving through the High Street by developing alternate routes and arrangements around the town centre. Asking for a response.
Was that a question? Was that a question? Do you want me to respond to that question?
I think the question is, will they be consulted before a decision is made?
Would you like me to respond?
Please do.
Yes. So there's a little bit of confusion here because Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council were directly part of the consultation. The programme manager came to the meeting in February of the Planning and Consultation Committee. The committee decided that the Community Council would not put forward a corporate response, but encouraged every member of the council to put their own response in, which then that was ratified at full council in March. Newport and Carrickbrook Community Council are the lead body on the HAS and therefore are well represented on the HAS. We call it the HAS for short, the High Street Approach Action Zone steering group, and the 4 members on that are empowered with the governance structure that was agreed and signed off by all 3 partners. That's Historic England, Isle of Wight Council, and the Community Council. Were empowered to act on behalf of the council as a body. So when the results of the consultation were brought to the HAS steering group in May, it was actually unanimous that we respected the results of the consultation. And what you see in the cabinet papers, that map, that was what we were going to be going for first, even though there was a wider consultation on other elements. But that what you see before you in the cabinet papers was that was the result of the consultation, basically what the public told us and what the community forum that helped facilitate it, and what the members from the community council who are empowered to act on behalf of the council agreed to. So there was a consultation. It's the Newport and Carrickbrook Community Council. They are the lead member. They were the applicant as a part of with part of Shaping Newport, and it's part of the Isle of Wight Council with big funder there, and of course Historic England, as we have in Ryde as well. So there's a structure there. Basically, it's Community Council's project. But secondly, so the other point you've made, or whoever wrote that in, I'm sure who it was, talked about. Sorry,
Councillor Bode.
Oh right, okay, that's interesting. Right, okay. So the talking about empowering the decision to give the Director of Neighbourhoods to look at, was it relieving the volume of traffic and essentially, well, that's actually supports what we're trying to do in Newport, which is to make it a public environment, pedestrian environment, widen the pavements and so on and so forth. It's perfectly natural that as we move towards more cycling, walking, and better use of public transport, that this is what you want to do for a modern town, even though it's a sort of historic medieval town, which was invented before designed before we had cars. So it's perfectly natural that's in there. We need to look at that, absolutely. So I'm very clear in my mind that has been very good consultation, and there's just maybe just a lack of understanding. I do my best to explain to everybody what is going on, but some people maybe just don't want to listen. So thank you.
If Paul passes on to you the letter, will you respond to Councillor Bode?
Well, if you could maybe just give him what I've just said this evening, that's okay. If you can just do a transcript of that, that'd be helpful, rather than me having to write it all out again. I said it all again. Yeah, I said it all again last night. So I think third time of hearing, maybe it might work. I don't know.
Right. Any other members' questions? Close the meeting.